There he is, Craig. You did say that we would be chatting this week and we would have the winners covered.
Well, we did, yeah. I mean, you just you mentioned Brooks, and the course exaggerated the difference in quality, and his length and playing so well put him at such an advantage. There was only really Dustin Johnson that probably could have gone with him last week. I mean, Tiger and Rory at their best could have gone with him, but he really put Tiger to the sword in the opening couple of rounds, and I think even Tiger was a little bit probably intimidated for the first time in his career even.
I think you hit the nail on the head last week, Craig, when you said the reason that you said 9-mile walk, undulations, that's what had Tiger cooked for me. I think that the fatigue factor of not being able to swing the ball on the 18th hole, the same as you do on the first, just killed him. And it killed 90% of it. But you look at him, they say that Brooks Koepka's the fittest man. And it was a great price as well.
It was in the end. He actually, it was a great price to start with. And then after the first round, I wrote an update and mentioned that there was quite a little weather advantage, or I thought there was at the time, going to the second round, where he had quite a draw advantage over the first 2 days. And there was still some 7-4 about in the second day. And he was starting in the best of the conditions. And he put it to bed. By the end of the second round, he'd put the tournament to bed effectively, apart from a little bump down the back nine on the final day. Well, he just, you will know in future that when we get to the courses that exaggerate kind of the length, he's going to be the man to beat. Any of these majors where length is key and driving straight. Like you said as well, the fitness of them courses, it had been kind of damp in New York leading up to it, and it's got to tell with Tiger because he couldn't make the final day's practice either, could he? He had to kind of not play on the Wednesday before. He's having to be so cautious. There's only so many more good days for Tiger, I think.
Yeah, I think you just got it is the old cliche of horses for courses. Now you know that any Open, British Open, links play where you've got to have discipline and low ball flight and an unbelievable short game and imagination, then you don't rule out Tiger. When it comes to brute strength, then you know there's a handful of players. And I mean, you have a look at one stage, you had the 4 or 5 biggest hitters on tour in the top 7 or 8. Even Luke List was up there, who just grips it, rips it, and goes and finds it. And sometimes he can't find it with a map or a compass because that's how far he hits it.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think the one thing, though, I will say in Brooks' defence is that this week coming up at the Colonial, last year he was second. It's a real trappy little course where you can't hit a driver. And he's not playing this week, but he has entered them in the past, like the Byron Nelson, and he's actually played better in them type events than Tiger ever did on fiddly little courses. So it is possible that down the line, Brooks is going to become a better all-round player than Tiger.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm glad you mentioned that, Craig, because we're going to go to the Colonial this week, who I think is, first of all, I think it's a little bit like the Heritage, where you must be disciplined and take your irons and just hit your greens and your fairways. But I look at it and I think, how many of these players are going to have a massive hangover from Bethpage? How much damage to the individuals did Bethpage do? So I think there's probably a big value on the outsiders this week if you can pick the right players.
I think there is. I think there's a plethora of outsiders that have quite similar chances to me. And you may even want to favour the ones that didn't play last week, but most of them kind of did. So you've got CT Pan that won at the Heritage. Yep. So you know that he's going to fit this course. He was 20th last year. Kevin Tway, who's already won on the PGA Tour this year, has had two good performances here in previous years when he hasn't been playing so well. He comes here about 100 to 1. And Danny Lee showed up well last week in the early stages. I mean, like you say, though, it may have harmed him, Bethpage, but he'd had a iffy season till then, so he will have some confidence. Some players, I do think, Bethpage will have knocked it out of them, like you say, Flash. They will have got fatigued, and in doing so, their swing will have suffered as the days have gone on, as you've got to the fourth round, and they'll probably have to go back to the drawing board at the start of this week just to get themselves back in their own little groove with the game. I mean, Zach Johnson showed up well last week. I thought he must have a chance this week. He's twice a winner here. He's quite a fiddly little player himself. It's all going to depend on what players bounce from last week, and so they just don't back it up with another performance, and what players feed off it. I mean, I do think Jordan Spieth will feed off it this week. I think he's back in his hometown. I think he's going to end up like Ben Hogan with a similar profile here of kind of owning this tournament. And last week was the best he's played all season on a course that suited the Bombers, which he really isn't one of them. I know people have said, well, he's too short in the betting this week at 14 to 1. But then people have to remember that the previous 2 years he's been going off at 9 to 2 and 7 to 1. He is a winner, and he's back on his favourite course, playing well. And you know Jordan Spieth loves the limelight, doesn't he? He must have hated these previous months where he's been out of the limelight, having to play down the field. You always get the feeling when you watch Jordan Spieth, he's kind of quite entertaining, quite cavalier in his approach. And so I'm expecting a big performance from Jordan Spieth this week. I really am. I think last week back in the limelight will suit him, and a bit of confidence. He's young enough. He shouldn't have any physical effects from Bethpage, should he? So we've got to think of him. But like you say, Flash, maybe this is the week, apart from Jordan, to look at the top end of the lower down in the market, around the 100 to 1 shot, I think.
Well, I've gone for a 25 to 1 shot, and he's half the forgotten man. He's not an actual player, as in a personality that I like, but I've got to go against my personal opinion, Bryson DeChambeau, because he's double the odds that he would have been 8 weeks ago. He's around the 25, 28 to 1 mark. And on the second round at Bethpage, because obviously he missed the cut, he went double bogey, triple bogey, bogey, 6 over, first 3 holes, 10, 11 and 12, finished. That's you done. And then he sort of parred in. So his golf game was not in bad situation. He just ruined any chance he had. He shot a 72, which is no problem at all in the first round. And then you can't go 6 over within 3 holes and your first 3 holes and think you're going to be able to get it back. So I like Bryson at 25 because you know what he's like. Technician, hits his irons, hits his greens, and he putts. Don't like him, but I like his chances and I like his odds. The other one is Happy Barmrat. Again,
right.
I've heard he's gone back to his old putting coach, and he's now starting to roll the ball better. The thing is with Barmrat, he can mix it with anyone, tee to green, but he misses the putts. A bit like your Matsuyama. He's a little bit like your Scott Piercy, who 2 weeks ago in Dallas had enough putts from 6 foot and in to win 2 tournaments. But I think Happy Barmrat around the 80 to 100 to 1. I'm just going to go with them 2 this week because another thing I always do, Craig, I take a week off after a major because you don't know who's going to turn up and who's having the hangover.
Of course, that's it. And you make that was a good point about Bryson DeChambeau. Now you've made the point, it's come to me that in the early part of his career, the place he excelled at when he was trying to make his kind of get his card was the Heritage, at the Heritage Classic, which is the course with the strongest correlation to this week. I kind of overlooked him, to be fair, but you've made a good point that, and of course, it won't have taken that much out of him last week. So the beauty of backing Bryson DeChambeau is this: if he gets in the van, he more than likely wins. So you're not backing a player that is going to back off when he gets to the Sunday. He is a player that wins when he gets in the van. So that's a really good, I can kind of back that up with a bit more form line, and it looks an absolute, quite a nice bet that people aren't necessarily seeing. I'm like you, I'm not keen on him. He drives me nuts watching him. But, Happy Barn Rat. Now, you make a good point about him as well. Amongst the professionals, they talk about him like he stripes the ball. He impresses them with the way he hits the golf ball and the way he flushes it. And people have spoken about him having a chance at Wentworth and things like that. Well, that's a bit longer than this week Wentworth, but it's a similar course where you've got to be able to shape your shots and you're playing through tree-lined fairways and what have you. So, yeah, it's quite an interesting couple of picks there. I'd not really looked too deeply at either of them, to be fair. I didn't, but, you make a good point, and I don't think either will be having a hangover from Bethpage either.
Craig, can you just summarise just for this tournament, what your picks are going to be? And at the end, can you give our viewers, because obviously we need to give them all the information and there's plenty more than we can actually go through now. Can you give them like where they can find your write-ups and where you can find all your tips?
Yeah, no problem. So this week, my 4 picks on oddsmarket.com. Jordan Spieth is my first one. Like I've covered here, I fancy his chances. Zach Johnson, he is, again, covered here. I like his chances. He's a winner. Kevin Tway is the 3rd selection. I've also, on my article, I've put in a first-round leader bet for Kevin Na. He's won this market 3 times, would you believe? And that's a remarkable feat, but he's also been placed once. I tipped him up to my members last year at Edwards Tips, and they got on at 66s. He's a similar price this year. He's almost a blind bet.
66s.
Yeah, and so I really like the chances of Kevin Na this week in the first round leader. He may actually compete for the tournament as well. And I think that's kind of covered it. Was there something else I needed to cover there, Flash, that you mentioned?
Yeah, just where they can find out all the information from your tips for the upcoming golf.
Yeah, it's on oddsmarket.com. On tips, click on tips, click on more sports. But normally, if you click on tips, betting tips, you'll find my article there.
Cheers, Craig. I'm just going to add on to that, as I said to you before, Happy Barn Rat around the 80-1 mark. That's Kuradek Happy Barn Rat, and Bryson DeChambeau 25-1 for the Colonial this week, Charles Schwab Championship.